When the user enters the augmented reality environment, they can observe the objects, which are part of the training, and the control panel. They can enter edit mode, which allows them to see the shelf from which they can bring the objects for editing. They can navigate through the steps and observe the objects which have been positioned in each step, like in this case. Additionally, they can enter the virtual reality mode, which allows them to see the virtual reality environment instead of the augmented reality environment. The first step upon entering a virtual environment is to establish a reference point. This point will establish the connection and positioning between virtual and real environments. The positioning is done by placing the controller in a specific position. And from this point on, all objects are then oriented and positioned relative to this reference point, which is represented by a blue rectangle in the virtual world. After the reference point has been established, the user returns to the virtual environment and is able to see the control panel and some objects that were added to the virtual environment. They are also able to navigate through the steps and can access the edit mode. In this mode, a shelf appears in which the user can browse selecting objects. To select an object, the user must point to it, bring it out of the shelf, and edit as needed. In addition to positioning and orientation, the user can change the size of the object as needed. After editing an object, if the user is no longer interested in it within the virtual environment, it is possible to remove it by placing it back on the shelf. It is also possible to move and edit the objects in the environment simply by pointing to these objects. In the case of the text panel, it is possible to edit it using a virtual keyboard. It is also possible, in edit mode, to navigate through the steps sequentially by using dedicated buttons. When the goal of the training is to prepare individuals for operating real equipment, it is essential to include a 3D model of this equipment in the virtual environment. In this case, since the objective is the training of a universal testing machine, the 3D model of the machine is selected and brought to the virtual environment. The 3D model of the real equipment is aligned to the reference point and its size adjusted to match that of the real machine. The training is then built around this virtual model, using it as a basis for the interactions. The moment training starts in the lab, where the real equipment exists, the reference point will be adjusted so that this virtual machine is in the same position as the real machine. As the real machine will be a part of the training during the entire process, it is interesting that the same happens with the virtual machine. For this, a special tool is used that defines a specific object as an occlusion object. the tool is applied to the 3D model of the machine, and it becomes part of all steps without the need to copy to each one of them. In addition to inserting instruction text in the steps to tell the user what he must do, it is often necessary to add objects that indicate where the actions must be performed. In step 2, for example, it is necessary to press a button to turn on the machine. Therefore, an arrow is selected and placed at the location of the power button. This also occurs in step 3, in which it is necessary to use the machine control panel to lift the upper chuck, and so an arrow is selected and positioned where the control panel is located. When the training is initiated, there is the first step with the title of the tutorial. Moving to the second step, the instruction is to turn on the machine. In the third step, the machine's control panel is used to raise the upper chuck of the machine. In the fourth step, the test specimen is placed on the appropriate location. In the fifth step, the control panel is once again utilized to move the machine. And that's the end of the tutorial.